Landlords of Reddit, what are your tenants from Hell Stories? When I was a little kid, my parents bought a cheap house in a neighboring town and fixed it up to rent. Two young women moved in and were great. Just out of college, working entry level and kind of getting by, no trouble. They called at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve because there was a spider. My dad called back when we got home from church service and asked what they wanted him to do. They said they wanted him to kill it. So he went out on Christmas Eve to kill their spider. They seemed to think this was normal, like about on par with what you'd expect your landlord to do if your water pipes burst on Christmas Eve. The least he could do given the situation. Not a horror story by any stretch, but it makes me laugh. He told me that I was not allowed to move out until I could kill my own spiders, because F that. My dad owns quite a few apartment buildings throughout Colorado. One summer while I was in college, he was between managers for one of his 80-unit properties, so I acted as the stand-in manager until he hired a new manager. I can't say she was a worst tenant per se, but I definitely have a few funny stories surrounding one woman named Kate. One day, we were served a notice that Kate was taking us to small claims court. Why? Because her in-unit washing machine was not working. Had she reported the problem to management? Nope. The maintenance man and I entered the unit that afternoon to fix the washing machine. The problem? It was unplugged. Same summer. My dad awakens me at 2 a.m. saying the local police department is at the apartment on a shots fired report. When I arrive at the apartment, the place is lit up like Christmas with squad cars. There must have been 20 officers at the scene. What prompted the call? Kate and her bimbo friend were walking back from the bars hammered. They heard 2 loud pops and decided someone was firing at them. What actually happened? 2 guys launched a bottle rocket from a nearby balcony. Also worth noting that this happened on the 4th of July. From what I know, Kate is still a tenant. I can call my dad and get some more Kate stories if anyone is interested. 2 other entertaining stories from when I was growing up. When I was young, my dad owned 3 duplexes in a row. One winter, around 1995, I believe, he noticed that the energy bill for one of the units was exorbitantly higher than the other units. He was curious about their energy consumption and paid a visit to the property one day while the tenant was at work. Edit. I clarified with my dad and he gave the tenant notice 24 hours prior that he was coming to perform an annual check of the fire alarms. He entered the basement and stumbled upon hydroponics galore. He said that there were over 30 marijuana plants, each with their own UV lamp and watering system. While weed is legal in Colorado now, it certainly was not 21 years ago. He told the tenant that he would be entering the basement in 2 days with a maintenance man to perform routine boiler maintenance. When he returned in 2 days, the plants and hydroponic systems were gone. Growing up, my dad always told me you could identify a grow house from a mile away because it was the only house in the block that did not have snow on its roof. My dad leased 2 or 3 units to the local Mormon church at the 80-unit apartment complex I helped manage for a summer. The idea was the church would house their missionaries in my dad's units while they completed their mission. As a result, the apartment inhabitants would rotate every year or so. Well, one rotation. My dad had a particularly un-Mormon batch of Mormon missionaries. This batch threw ragers so loud that the noise could be heard 4 buildings away. They were also known to frequent the local escort services and associated drug scene. As you may imagine, my dad had quite the uphill battle to fight when it came to addressing the missionaries' extracurricular indiscretions with the Mormon church. I do believe he eventually did successfully evict them, though. Edit. I just talked with my dad. Fortunately, sadly, Kate moved out last summer. My dad, however, was happy to share more Kate stories and other recent stories. The unit that Kate lived in was townhouse style, with the first floor consisting of a 1-car garage and a staircase leading up to the living area. My dad's manager was posting a few available units on Craigslist when she happened upon another curious posting. Kate had posted the garage for rent on Craigslist under the premise that somebody could live in the garage and they would be able to come upstairs to use the kitchen and restroom. The manager immediately marched over there to notify Kate that her posting violated the lease, which specified no subletting, and Colorado Housing Code, which specifies a maximum occupancy of 2 people per bedroom plus 1. Kate lived in a 1-bedroom with her husband and child. Kate was unable to comprehend what the manager was saying. She just kept repeating, "But think of all of the extra money we could make each month." My dad said she simply could not wrap her head around the fact that her idea would be violating a legally binding agreement and state housing code. They had to get her husband involved to have her remove the post. Kate called on Christmas Eve one year complaining that the heat would not turn on. My dad is a good guy and does not F around with things like tenants being without heat, so he immediately got up from the holiday dinner with extended family to fix her problem. The issue? The breaker for the HVAC system was flipped. When tenants come into the office to pay rent, my dad always offers them water or iced tea. One of his tenants accepted, opened the fridge, and grabbed one of the beers my dad has in there. Now, without fail, he always grabs a beer when he drops off his rent check, which makes my dad chuckle. My dad is buddies with one of the local mailmen. Whenever he has a tenant that screws him over by trashing the apartment or moving out in the middle of the night, the mailman will tell my dad their new address. My dad gives the mailman a gift certificate for a steak restaurant and a nice bottle of whiskey for Christmas every year. They have had this arrangement for about 10 years. I have a couple tenant from hell stories. In 2007, an older couple decided to quit paying their rent, but they had pretty good excuses, so I didn't evict them until after 3 months of not paying. Finally went down to the courthouse to file an unlawful detainer on them. We finally had our day in court. The female, who was usually dressed nicely with fake nails and an expensive weave, showed up looking like an old hag. The guy was using a walker. Eye roll, this effer didn't need one. They claimed I was a slumlord and never fixed anything, but I had receipts from every repair, including a new AC unit. After I got the judgment against them, I tried to garnish the man's wages, was told he worked for Coca-Cola Co. Turns out they'd never heard of him, but after a little digging, I found out they had both been arrested for selling Coke. The officer showed me mugshots dating back to the early 80s. They also stole the refrigerator. This past summer, I had a family of 7 move into a 5-bedroom house. They paid their deposit and first month's rent. That's it. Haven't seen another dime from them. To top it off, they didn't get the power switched into their name, so I got a $400+ power bill. About a month ago, I called the water company. Turns out they never had the water turned on, so they have been stealing water. The water company pulled the meter. I'll be the one paying to have it put back. When I gave a 24-hour notice to do a walkthrough with the police present, the woman answered the door told me, "You can't come in, and we'll get out when you follow all the procedures and the sheriff kicks us out." I think they've done this before.